In the last stream, we were working on finally setting up a simple storage network utilizing the storage network master, all of these storage link cables, and most importantly for us, the advanced storage remote, so that now we can access all of our items in all of our chests wirelessly wherever we are in the world, and more importantly than that, we can also craft with those items by pulling them and setting them back whenever we do or don't need them. And between streams, I've also done a little bit of work on upgrading our coal production system. Previously, we just had one coke oven here, and it turns out that if you only have one coke oven and you try and distribute the coal in the way that we were doing, with half of the coal going to the coke oven and half of the coal going to the auto workbench to fuel our trains, that system is actually not sustainable, because the whole setup here only produces 1.5 times as much coal. So you take one coal, and if you process it through the coke oven, you get 1.5 times as much. But what we were doing is we were distributing that coal between two outputs, which means we were then dividing it by 2 every time. So essentially, we were losing coal with the initial setup because too much of it was going to the auto workbench. However, now that we have 3 coke ovens here, instead of doing a 50-50 split between the auto workbench and the coke oven, we're now doing a 4-way split. So each of the coke ovens and the auto workbench each get 25% of the coal, which means that hopefully this system should continue working and should continue producing coal forever. Essentially, long story short, if you want this system to work, you need at least 2 coke ovens alongside a workbench. And you can see this is now working. We are now banking up on coal coke. Previously, we would just slowly run out of coal coke until the system stopped working because it didn't have enough coal coke to make torches, and then everything grinds to a halt. So that has now been fixed, and I think in general, the more coke ovens you have, just the better this system gets, up until the point that your sawmill can no longer process the torches fast enough, at which point, of course, we could look at upgrading them. We do still have a problem here, and that problem is that we now are making 3 times as much creosote, and at the end of the last episode, we were already dangerously close to filling this fluid tank with creosote. You'll see now it is full of creosote. We've got over 500 buckets backed up here, and the whole system is once again about to come to a screeching halt if we don't set up a system to deal with that excess creosote. As I mentioned before, I think the nullifier here is going to be our best bet to make that happen. Now, the only thing that we don't have, I think, in terms of getting the nullifier is bricks, because bricks, I was going to say require clear, but as it turns out, never mind, they do not. You can take coke brick and, of course, craft it with cobblestone to make blast brick, and then from there, it looks like we can take a blast brick and craft it with coal to make nether brick, and then from there, we can take nether brick and craft that with water to make regular brick. Interesting. So if I go ahead and take these buckets, also I should point out that I have moved these chests between streams just to make it a little easier for us to walk around. Before we had a horribly long storage cable that went like along and then down to our chests over here. So I have moved a few things just to make it a little easier for us to get around. But over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can then go ahead and craft up a couple of Minecraft bricks. 8 is actually all we need. And with those, now the only thing we don't have is a lava bucket, which thankfully, again, is fairly doable because you can craft the lava bucket by crafting nether brick around an empty bucket. And as you can see here, we do have access to nether brick. And so essentially, I think we just need to get a bunch more blast brick to get the nether brick to make the other 4 nether brick to make the lava bucket. And there we go. Once we have 8 nether brick, boom, and we are basically good to go. We might not have the tin required. Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to be the case. However, I am almost certain that we do have quite a bit of tin ore available in here, and you know what, we might as well go ahead and just take all of this and dump it into the system. The coal is going to be useful for making things like steel and just torches in general going forward, and we might as well have that tin available should we need it in the future. So we'll go ahead and start distributing this tin amongst these furnaces here. I feel like we might as well smelt all of it up again just to have going forward, and as per usual, we can do something like this and get some tiny coal in here because the tiny coal is just more efficient than regular coal basically all the time. Between streams, I have also put a bit more steel into our blast furnace here because I do want to unlock some research today that requires mechanics research, and to do that, of course, we're going to need more steel gears, and so having that steel available is going to make that possible for us. Speaking of which, we did automate the production of basic logistics research in the last stream. And thankfully, this has been chugging along quite nicely between streams to the point where we now have 140 logistics research just ready to go in this drawer here. And of course, more is being made all of the time. And so that's going to make it a lot easier for us to unlock a lot of research going forward, which is very nice indeed. Either way, back over here, let's see if we can't get the device frame. And with that, if we don't have everything we need for the nullifier. We do. Nice. Now, in order for this to work, we are going to need to get more pipes as well. And so what I'm going to do is temporarily, and by temporarily I mean permanently, steal some iron plates from our research setup to allow us to do something like this. And if we take a few of these pipes and just run them across from the top of the fluid tank, so I'm thinking something along the lines of this, but ideally we do it from the top there. I have set up a little bit of a ladder hatch here. For whatever reason, I'm not quite sure why, you can't put ladders directly on the coke oven, which I thought was very odd. I tried putting them on, it didn't work. I tried like breaking the coke oven, putting the ladders on, and then reactivating the coke oven, and the ladders just pop right off. So I'm not quite sure what the deal is with that. But either way, essentially, we just need to make sure here that the nullifier is further away than the creosote tank. And so if I do something like this, that should now take all of the creosote from these coke ovens and just delete it, which is perfect because now all of the creosote should go to the fluid tank here first, and then any excess should go to the nullifier. Again, just keeping this whole system running smoothly. So now that that's taken care of, the research that I would like to unlock today is the research for the pulverizer. Not only is this going to allow us to be more efficient with our ores, essentially allowing us to get 2.5 ingots for every ore if we add the pulverizer into our kind of ore processing chain before the furnace, but it's also going to allow us to begin automating things like gravel and sand. And also, I would like to try and look at automating the production of marble as well. So marble can be crafted in this pack, but to do so, you just have to craft 8 stone bricks together, which of course you can get from regular stone, which you can get by smelting cobblestone. And so along the same lines here, I do also want to look at getting our first cobblestone generator. This is just a block that you place down that passively generates cobblestone. If we can get this in combination with the pulverizer, we should be able to automate the production of cobblestone, stone, gravel, sand, marble, and glass if we wanted to as well, which is going to make building out an actual base so much easier. Because right now, we have a lot of machines and a lot of contraptions kind of haphazardly placed down, but I would like to actually build a more cohesive factory and a more desirable base than what we currently have. To do that, we're going to need a lot more resources, and instead of spending a ton of time mining for a ton of cobblestone and a ton of marble, I think if we can automate those processes, it's going to make it a lot easier for that base expansion. So, in order to get the pulverizer, we need 16 mechanics research and 32 logistics research. The mechanics research just requires steel gears and the copper coil blocks, that being these guys right here. For that, we need a bunch of copper ingots with sticks. You can also do this craft here with copper wire and treated sticks, which is substantially more efficient. There is also a recipe that uses non-treated sticks, but you get double the number of LV wire coils if you use treated sticks. And if we are going to automate this, which we're going to have to, by the way, we need to automate mechanics research to progress in the pack. If we're going to automate it, it might not be a terrible idea to try and use this crafting recipe with the treated sticks. We could potentially start pulling creosote from that tank, auto-crafting treated wood, and then from there look at using another metal press to get those copper wires, because these copper wires right here can be made with the metal press using a wire mold. For now, we do have enough copper to where it's not really a huge deal if we use it in a less than efficient way to make these copper wire blocks. And again, if we're going to get the 16 mechanics research that we need here, we just need 16 of these. You do make them in sets of 8, and so we need, I think, 64 LV wire coils. Although, actually saying that, you do actually get double the amount of wire just for using the treated stick, even if you use copper ingots. And so you know what? I will go ahead and take some of the treated wood that I have here, make that into treated sticks, and then we'll use those treated sticks as a way to make all of the required LV wire coils. And there we go, 16 copper coil blocks. And then as for the steel gears, we could craft these the old-fashioned way, but again, it is now more efficient for us to use the metal press here. And so real quick, if we just set this to extract, that should prevent any future copper from making its way over there. And then we'll do the same here. We'll set this to input temporarily, which is going to allow this to run once again. And essentially now, if we just take a half stack of steel ingots, we can drop that down onto the metal press, and that is going to somewhat slowly but surely produce for us 16 steel gears, which we could then put into our new electronic researcher. But I think it's probably going to be easier and quicker if we just grab 16 coal and then distribute the copper coil blocks and steel gears amongst our burner researchers. Once that's done, we'll set that back to insert, and we'll set U back to output, and then we'll quickly grab some of the large amount of coal that we dropped in from that tin chest earlier, and let's go distribute that amongst our burner researchers. While we wait for these to process the mechanics research, if we're going to get the cobblestone generator, we're going to need to get some lead, because these basic platings here from Nuclear Craft require 2 lead ingots per 4 basic plating, and we need 4 basic plating to make 1 cobblestone generator. Right now we don't have any lead, however we do have lead ore available to us, and so as per usual, it's just going to be a case of moving our spare burner drill to a new chunk that has some lead ore in it. Alright, so I believe this chunk right here, with the horse in it, is the chunk that's going to have lead in. Let me do a quick check. It does indeed, 196 units found. Again, a lot more copper here than lead, and so much like before when we were getting silver, we are going to get a lot more copper than we are lead, but hopefully, if we drop some coal in here, again, might as well craft that down into tiny coal. 8 tiny coal is all that you need to get a stack of tiny coal. Boom. That should hopefully get us some lead fairly quickly. We are, of course, going to just leave this running, and it really depends on how fast we want to generate cobblestone as to how much lead we're going to need, because the cobblestone generator that we're going to make here only produces 2 cobblestone per second, which is not a particularly large amount of cobblestone. However, as a reward for crafting 1 cobblestone generator, we do get 7 more cobblestone generators. And so in total, we would have 8. Those 8 can produce 16 cobblestone per second, and even better than that, you can actually craft 8 of the tier 1 cobblestone generators together to make a compact cobblestone generator that itself produces 16 cobblestone per second, just in a more compact format. And then if we really wanted to, we could craft 8 of those compact cobblestone generators to get a dense cobblestone generator that can produce 128 cobblestone per second. So that is a possibility. I do think for the time being that 16 cobblestone per second is probably going to be completely fine, especially because the pulverizers that we're going to get initially are also not going to be particularly fast, and we're obviously still using vanilla furnaces as well, which are also not particularly quick. So going any further than that at this moment in time, I don't really think is going to be worth it. You can see how far we've had to come because our base is all the way back over there. So I'm going to quickly grab a little bit more lead, get that smelted up, and then hopefully by the time we get back, all of our mechanics research should be done. We should be able to unlock the pulverizer and get some of these resources automated. All right, not too long later, we now have 3 lead ingots. Not a ton, but I do want to keep 1 lead ore for future scanning, and we only need 2, of course, to make our first set of plating. And so let's see here, cobblestone generator. We, of course, need 4 basic plating. Easy enough, and then just 2 tin and 2 cobblestone. Of course, we did just smelt up some tin earlier in the episode, and so boom, there is our cobblestone generator, and as we saw, we get 7 more cobblestone generators and a bronze ingot, which is everything we need to upgrade our basic cobblestone generator to a compact cobblestone generator. And now I'm fairly certain that if I just place this down above our current cobblestone drawer, that is going to just start producing cobblestone. And it looks like the way that it does it here is it gives you 16 cobblestone every second, as opposed to giving you, close to 1 cobblestone per tick. But that's completely fine. So it does come in batches, but you'll see already we are well over 500 cobblestone, closing in on 1,000. And so we're going to have hopefully more than enough cobblestone to expand out our base and get a decent amount of sand, gravel, glass, and marble. Over here, all of our mechanics research is done, and so if we were to go ahead and grab some logistics research from our buffer drawer, we should be able to unlock the pulverizer. We do first have to take off this quest right here, and then boom, and boom. Nice. So the pulverizer, I don't think, is going to be too difficult for us to make. Similarly to the sawmill, if we take a look in JEI here, it requires a piston. Easy enough. It requires a machine frame, which is also easy enough, but does require even more of these steel mechanical components. And once again, for those, we have to get steel plates and copper ingots. The steel plates can, of course, be made with the metal press, but the hammer is the same efficiency as the metal press, and so there's really no reason not to do it with the hammer, just for the purposes of speed. And so let's take copper and steel all the way over to our engineer's workbench. Boom, boom, and boom. 6 is probably not going to be enough, because I think we are going to want to make more than one pulverizer here, almost certainly, because it takes one pulverizer to turn cobblestone into gravel, and then it takes a second pulverizer if we want to turn that gravel into sand. For now, though, boom and boom, there's our first pulverizer. Ideally, we'd get a pulverizer for iron and a pulverizer for copper as well. The only trouble is kind of twofold. The first problem is speed. The pulverizer, I don't think, is particularly fast in its current iteration, and so trying to use one pulverizer to feed 4 furnaces, I think, is going to create a bottleneck at the pulverizer. And if we go ahead and throw this down, the second problem is power. Right now, we do have power, but I think we are getting somewhat close to the limits of what our water wheels can handle. Each one of these is producing just shy of 90 redstone flux per tick, and so we're producing about 270, maybe 260. If we look at some of these machines, this one uses 20. I think both of these metal presses also use 20, so we're at 60 there. And then over here, we have our researcher, which also uses another 10, so that's 70. Then you've got both of the external heaters. Together, those use approximately another 10, and so we're at 80. That does give us a little bit of wiggle room, but that can get eaten up very quickly, especially if we start looking at making these pulverizers faster, which we can do with things like these thermal upgrades here. Again, the logistics research really isn't a problem. We can unlock this right away, and at that point, that gives us access to these hardened upgrade kits. These really aren't too difficult to make, actually. The only thing that we don't have currently is nickel, which is needed along with iron to make Invar. Again, nickel, much like lead, is another one of those ores that we have one of and could get more of, but don't currently have any of. So I think what I might do here is quickly go ahead, make another pulverizer, and then we'll see with those two if we can't get gravel, sand, glass, and potentially marble automated. Okay, so one more pulverizer later, and I think what I'm probably going to do here is move this cobblestone generation setup, because right now we're actually only using these first 2 water wheels. The first one here is powering our coal production, the second one is powering basically everything else, and then the third one is currently not doing anything. So what I think I might do is utilize this space here for the time being to try and get these pulverizers going. So I think what we'll do is we'll place down the pulverizers here and here. We'll then move our cobblestone drawer and place that up there. You can also break these, by the way. In some versions of Minecraft, if you break those, the items spew everywhere. Thankfully, in this pack, the config has been changed so that it just moves with the cobblestone in it. And so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to place the cobblestone generator on top of this basic drawer like that. That's, of course, going to continue to fill this drawer with cobblestone, which is exactly what we're after. Then over here, we can do a couple of LV wire connectors like that, and an LV wire relay at the top of this post, which for some reason sometimes doesn't let me climb up it. Let me try just breaking and replacing that. There we go. Perfect. We'll do something like this, and then from there we should be able to connect to both of our pulverizers like this, and of course back to the water wheel. Nice. So these should now be ready to go. What we can do in here, much like we did with the sawmill, is if we hit shift and left click, that's going to clear all of the default configuration. And then we want to set the top to blue, which is input, and we want to set the right-hand side to red, which is output. And so from there, we want to make sure auto input is enabled, and that's going to start pulling the cobblestone down from this drawer into the pulverizer. Then if we set the right-hand side to red and we have auto output enabled, which it is by default, that should push over into this pulverizer. Again, if the left side here is set to blue, it should get gravel any second now. We might have to turn auto input on that as well. And then from there, we can also set the right-hand side here to red, make sure auto output is on. And if we quickly go ahead and craft up some more storage drawers, we can place one of those here for sand. Ideally, I do want that facing forward, I think. And actually, what I think I might do is grab a regular old furnace, and we might look at getting another external heater here, because I think I do want glass to be made as well. So I think what I'll do is I'll put the storage drawer here. This is hopefully going to store sand for us. But then we'll put a furnace here. And then if we use a regular old item conduit, what we should be able to do is, of course, set this to extract, but just set it to round robin. Of course, we do want to make sure that you actually don't connect there because you have to pump into the top of a Minecraft furnace. So if we grab another set of item conduits, we can do this and this. And then if we grab our Yeta wrench out of the system, we can shift left click, make sure this is set to insert and insert. And then over here, we're going to set extract, round robin, always active. And so we should get some sand down here and some sand up here. Nice. This, of course, requires another external heater. The external heaters are pretty straightforward. Nice. We'll put that right about here just because it's going to be easier to power it on this side. We can do this. And if we grab our insulated wire, we can do something like that. That should get the glass smelting up. In fact, never mind, I am a fool. I keep forgetting. I do have to make sure this is configured correctly. We want to jump and place that like this so that the power can go in from the top like that. And then if we've placed it correctly, then when we connect it up like this and like this, we should now see this begin to smelt. We do. Nice. All right, so now that this is working, we're getting glass and we're getting sand. There are other things that we want to get. I do want to get gravel as well. And one of the byproducts of pulverizing gravel into sand is flint. And so we're going to need at least 2 more storage drawers here. Let me quickly do one of these to get 4 more chests. And then we'll do something like this. And we'll just craft up a few more storage drawers. We're always needing more of these as we push forward in the pack. And so I think what I'll do is I will disconnect this. And then in our second pulverizer, if we set the top to yellow, we can have all of the flint pushed up into the basic drawer. It won't move until this process is done, but once it's done, it's going to push all of the flint up into that top drawer. We'll go ahead and lock all of these to their respective resources. And now we've got 2 things we need to worry about. The first is that pulverizing cobblestone into gravel also produces sand as a byproduct. So we'll grab our conduits, and if we do this, what we should be able to do is disconnect the upside to that, and then if we set this to insert, and if we set the bottom here to once again output on yellow, we should be able to set this to extract, always active, and all of that excess sand should make its way into the drawer. Cool. Now, the final thing is if we do want gravel, I don't think that... Actually, I don't know how this is going to work, but what I was thinking initially is that if we were to set the left side of this to output as well, I don't think that the pulverizer is smart enough to distribute the gravel 50-50. I think it's just going to send all of the gravel around into this pulverizer, or maybe all into this drawer. Let's see. If that first one went to the drawer, is the second one going to go to the drawer, or is it going to go to the pulverizer? It went to the pulverizer. Interesting. So it might actually do a little bit of splitting. I don't know if it's fully round robin. I don't know if it's going to distribute 50-50 all of the time. But we can keep an eye on it and we can see how that works. And so far, we do have gravel automated. We've got cobblestone, flint, sand, and glass automated. Of course, for the glass, we can go ahead and grab a hopper. Although, actually, you know, another item conduit is probably going to work better. And we can do something like this and this. Of course, disconnect this. Make sure that the top there is set to extract, always active, and that you're set to insert. And there we go. We're going to start to back up on glass as well. Fantastic. And so now, the next thing I want to do is stone as well. So if we want to be efficient about this, I think what we're probably going to want to do is try and use the one external heater here for 2 furnaces. So if we do something like this, we could then grab even more item conduits, and from there we could then run from the cobblestone drawer round into this furnace. I don't think that we can run conduits. Oh, never mind. I was going to say I don't think we can run them through the wiring here, but I think we might actually be able to. And so I think if we do something like this and then kind of run it along the top here, we can run that into the furnace there, and that's going to be able to send cobblestone directly around to the furnace, which should then just get smelted into regular stone. So extract, always active. You are going to be set to nothing, so I don't want you to do anything there. Let's pick up that rogue conduit, and hopefully we should see some stone filtering its way into here, at which point we should then be able to obviously set this to insert. We should then start making regular stone, which we're going to want to craft into stone bricks so that we can auto-craft the production of marble. And so that's 2 crafts. If we're going to want to craft those 2 crafts, we're of course going to need 2 more auto workbenches. For that, we do need more steel gears. Again, we could be slightly more efficient by using the metal press, but it's also not too expensive. And so if we just do something like this, we can take those 2 auto workbenches, and from here, I think I would like eventually to have a backup of stone, like regular stone. And so much like with the glass, I think what we'll do is we will extract from the top here, like this, and then we'll make sure this is set to insert. And so all of the stone is going to go through into this drawer. That's going to be our stone buffer drawer. So hopefully eventually things are going to start to back up in that drawer. And then from there, we're going to extract out into our first auto workbench. And I think I'll try and make this somewhat compact. So what I'll maybe do is put a conduit here and the auto workbench there. We can then disconnect this. We can set you to insert, and we can set this to extract. You are going to make 1, 2, 3, 4 stone bricks. So here, extract, always active, and boom. Again, what I might do actually, as we did previously, is something like this, just to limit the amount of stone that is inside of the auto workbench at any point in time. And then as for the stone bricks, I don't really think it's worth getting a storage drawer for those, and so I think we can probably just go directly into another auto workbench. If we do something like this, again, Yetta wrench is going to be our best friend here. We're going to set the east side to nothing. We're going to set the north side to extract, always active, and we're going to set the west side to insert. And then in here, we can just do something like this. And this time it doesn't matter if this fills up with stone bricks. I guess it does kind of matter if it fills up with stone bricks, because basically, if we leave all of these unlocked, it's just going to take more of the stone and kind of buffer it in here, which is not strictly necessary. So this works, and then the final piece of the puzzle, of course, is to do something like this, and then make sure that the side connected to the auto workbench is set to extract, and the side connected to the storage drawer is set to insert. Nice. And so with that, we have now effectively automated marble, stone, glass, sand, flint, cobblestone, and gravel. Not a particularly appealing setup. We could look to make this more appealing using the conduit facades. I did mention these previously in the last episode. These are fairly easy to make. They require sand and clay. Again, this is kind of one of the reasons why I want sand automated, so that we can make things like conduit facades without having to go and craft up an engineer's hammer and then craft cobble into gravel, gravel into sand, and then craft the conduit facades. Making those is going to be so much easier going forward now that we have access to sand on demand. And speaking of sand on demand, now in terms of the conduit facades themselves, the only thing we're missing is the clay. Now, clay we can make using slag, which we're getting as a byproduct from making steel inside of our blast furnace, along with dirt and a bucket of water. And we also do need clay if we want to invest in concrete, which is something we've not invested in up until now, but I think is probably well worth investing in. So we do have 4 buckets of water, which makes me think we should be able to make a couple of sets of clay here fairly easily. Unfortunately, you do have to put these buckets in manually. They don't move out on their own. That is completely fine. We can do this, and we can do this. And then, of course, the conduit facades, super easy. We just need sand, which we have over here. Of course, I would like to connect all of these storage drawers up to our simple storage network at some point fairly soon, so that we don't have to go and manually grab the sand whenever we need it. And basically, as you'll see if we hold shift here, these can be painted in the painting machine and then right-click onto a conduit to hide it. So the painting machine is a machine that we do not have access to. Never mind, in this pack, it has been tweaked. In this pack, you can just craft the conduit facade with a specific block, which is going to work for us. Unfortunately, I don't think we can craft grass, at least not at our current stage. Overworldian matter is something we're going to be able to get in the future, but right now we don't have access to it. And so essentially, the way it works, just to show it off here, even though we don't have grass, if I were to take something like stone brick, for example, which we can do from here, there we go, and I was to craft that with our conduit facades, that turns into a conduit facade that is textured like the stone brick. And so now, over here, we can kind of cover up these holes like this, and just make things look a little bit nicer. Of course, the stone brick does look a little out of place there, but again, as we move forward and as we set up an actual factory with, you know, a combination of marble brick and potentially stone brick, we could then look at using those blocks and those kind of conduit facades to cover up the item conduits in the future, which I think is going to be good. The same is true for our train station down here as well. We can cover up the conduits in the roof, just like I mentioned in the last stream, using those conduit facades when we decorate that rail station. And in terms of concrete, this is made with gravel, sand, and blocks of clay. Also not a problem, we'll take 2 of those. This stuff is super useful simply because of the fact that it's going to allow us to move faster around our factory, which is not a huge problem at the moment, but it's always nicer to be more efficient with our speed. And as we expand the factory and make it bigger and bigger, being able to get around is going to be a big plus. So it looks like my chisel is almost broken here. It is. That's completely fine. In fact, we can upgrade to a diamond chisel, which is just 1 stick and 1 diamond. This works in the exact same way as a regular chisel. It's just got a ton more durability. And essentially, as the quest would suggest, the concrete here is going to allow us to move faster. And so if we were to grab our excavator and potentially do something like this, we could dig out a bit of a pathway. Obviously, this is kind of a random place to put a path, but if we were to do this and we were to put down the concrete, we were given a building wand right at the start of the pack, and we can use that in combination with the concrete to build this out quite quickly, and this just allows us to move even quicker. You'll feel the difference as soon as we move off, and then we move on, and it goes even faster. We can get even faster if we get the next tier of traveler's boots. Right now we have the tier 1 boots. Yes, and the next quest actually gives us the tier 3 boots just for the cost of 16 mechanics research. And so I think real quick what I might do here is go ahead and craft up some more steel gears utilizing the metal press, craft up some more copper coil blocks just like we did at the start of the stream, and see if we can't get the 16 mechanics research required to get even faster boots. While we wait again for these burner researchers to produce that mechanics research, I think we need to move forward here with, like, I think the next big thing we need to do is kind of move away from the burner drills, and I think we need to work on a big power upgrade. And we also, of course, need to look at automating the mechanics research, because a lot of the progression that we're working towards now requires that research. For example, the next kind of big age starts with aluminum. In order to get aluminum, we have to go and complete this research right here for aluminum, which requires 32 lots of 8x mechanics research, which is 256 mechanics research. That's not like an undoable amount of mechanics research, but it does kind of hint towards us doing something similar to what we've done with logistics research here, where we look to automate the production of that mechanics research. The only thing that's currently standing in our way for that is steel, because you can't automate the crude blast furnace. Unlike the coke oven, where you can pipe items in and pump items out at ease, you can't actually do that with the crude blast furnace. If I tried to put an item conduit or a hopper on here to feed iron or coal in, it just wouldn't work. And so what we're going to have to do is unlock this research right here for faster steel that's going to allow us to unlock the improved blast furnace, which can be automated. Thankfully, it is just some logistics research. And so if we do this and this, we can get a one-use capsule for the improved blast furnace. And thankfully, it's also not particularly difficult to make. The improved blast furnace, and this is going to be easier, by the way, if I get my hammer out of the system. The improved blast furnace is just regular blast brick crafted with steel plates. And so if we were to, once again, and I should have got rid of this excess cobblestone as well, because we've got so much of it. There is a trash can up here, by the way. If you click this icon in the top left, you can then just put items that you don't want into this trash can, and then when you close it, they're gone. They're just deleted. And if you click it again, they're no longer here. So that is a way of deleting items you don't want. I don't think we need to keep that cobblestone. We've got infinite cobblestone being made for us over in the distance. Right now, I think our engineer's hammer is on its last legs. And so what I will do here is once again, steal some iron plates from our research machine, and we'll drop those in to make another engineer's hammer, at which point we can do something like this and start to get a bunch of steel plates. We need 27 steel plates per improved blast furnace that we make, and the only other thing you need outside of 27 improved blast brick, which you can get by crafting 27 steel plates with 27 blast brick, like this. It apparently has to be specifically steel plate on the top, blast brick on the bottom. like so. We also need another hopper as well, which we might have in the system. We do indeed. Let's take this. And the way you build this is the exact same as the previous blast furnace. You put down a 3x3 platform on the bottom. You then make that platform 2 taller by doing this and this. And then the final piece is just to put a hopper right at the top, like that. Once that's done, we can once again take our engineer's hammer out of the system, right-click the center, and we have a much sleeker, slenderer, and more importantly, automatable version of the blast furnace. So now, if we were to take some hoppers, we can pump iron into the top. And so if we go all the way up to the top here, we can put a hopper right about there. Surprisingly, despite the fact that we did just put a hopper there, it doesn't automatically pull items in. You do have to put another hopper or another item conduit on top. But now if we put the iron in there, it makes its way down into the blast furnace, which is perfect because now we can hook it up to our iron line that we have going to the metal press here, and that will automatically feed iron to the blast furnace. We then do need to provide it with fuel, which I think also actually goes in through the top slot. So we are going to have to do some finagling to make that work, but I'm fairly certain if I put coal in here, that's also going to get fed down into the correct slot in the blast furnace. And then the front slot here is where the steel comes out of. And so if we were to grab another storage drawer, we could place that down at the front. That's going to start to store all of the produced steel. And then finally, the last piece of the puzzle is the back of the machine, that being this port right here. This is where all of the slag is going to go. Because again, if the blast furnace does back up on slag, the thing will stop working. So you do want to make sure you have a place for that slag to go. And of course, that slag is also useful because we can use it for making concrete going forward, which is going to allow us to move around our factory much faster. Speaking of which, let's check in here. Do we have 16 mechanics research? The answer to that question is yes. And so, although it's not necessary, I do want to get these faster boots. So now let's take these off. Let's drop them back in the system. Let's swap them out for the tier 3 boots, which by default are already faster than the previous boots. And then that combined with the concrete here is just going to make us even faster, and it's going to make us that little bit more efficient for the future. So I think, chat, next time we'll come back, I will look at moving the blast furnaces here because I think we want the blast furnaces potentially to be closer to the coal coke production. Right now, all our coal coke's going in here, but I think we're probably going to want to expand this system out because I think we want some of that coal coke going into the blast furnace to fuel it. Because, of course, outside of iron, we do also need some kind of fuel to make the steel, and coal coke is the most efficient way of doing that. So we'll probably move that improved blast furnace somewhere closer to the coal coke setup and start siphoning some of this coal coke off for use in that blast furnace. That essentially is almost steel automated because then we can just hook up the iron and that's going to be good to go. And then we can also look at getting an extra metal press and using that to start auto-crafting the copper coil blocks, because as we saw, it is much more efficient to use the copper wires. And we might also look, if we want to be really efficient, at using those treated sticks as well. That would require auto-crafting with these sticks that we're producing as a byproduct of our coal production, and also tapping in to the massive amount of creosote that we're holding in the tank there. All of that might require that we look at getting the sequential fabricator here. This is a little expensive on the research front, but it is going to make auto-crafting that much faster. And so that is something that I think we'll work on next time. Also, now that we have marble coming in and, stone and glass and stuff, I'll probably start to look fairly soon at making this space look a little bit nicer and kind of trying to organize a little bit of everything that we have here. Again, things are kind of haphazardly placed down at the moment. I think we can rectify that. I think we can make this whole place look a little bit nicer, but that is going to have to be a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Feed the Factory there.